Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3, 2019, the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask for unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the subject of my special order.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to take a moment as we honor Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., his 90th birthday yesterday, and we continue to honor him throughout this week and next Monday. During this time, we recognize that we are in a society that is still riddled with injustices. As representatives, we have a duty to lift up those who are marginalized and work to ensure that we continue a path towards justice for every person. No person should ever feel less than in the United States of America. May we remember his legacy and his words to recommit to fighting for justice and equality. May we also speak out loudly and unapologetically about the ills of our society and work every single day to stay on the right side of justice. Madam Speaker, regards to the government shutdown, I'm very passionate about making sure that we put a human face to this crisis. So I rise today during the 26th day of this reckless government shutdown. The real crisis here is the negative human impact. In the homes of each of the federal workers across this nation, nearly a month without pay. Our federal workers are having to go to pawn shops to get cash to live. This is not right. Yes, there's a crisis for the families in my district who have corporate polluters today in their backyards that do not have any EPA inspectors monitoring our air quality. Yes, there's a crisis for the families who are wondering if their housing assistance will come next month from HUD. The shutdown will have a long-lasting negative impact on our lives, and it must end immediately. Madam Speaker, I'd like to take some time today to share stories about residents in Michigan who are impacted directly. Gregory Simpkins, who's president of the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 778, said 4 of the union's TSA employees quit last week, and 3 the week before. Right now, TSA employees are deemed essential and still going to work, but are not getting paid. Ms. Wilson, one of our TSA employees, said the morale is so low, she's never seen anything like it. With personal budgets stretched, she's afraid they will lose even more workers. One worker said to her that he can't pay for gas money to get to work, and he's worried and scared for the future of his family and for his life. Federal environmental protection workers right now are not at work protecting us. So when I think of this, I think of Line 5, which is a very dangerous pipeline, oil pipeline that threatens drinking water supply for Michiganders and our fresh water in the Great Lakes. We are in trouble, Madam Speaker, because the computers that run that model for emergency response is shut down during this crisis. Mark Correll, president of the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 3907, represents EPA workers who work on the motor vehicle emissions laboratories in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He and his colleagues are furloughed, meaning they are not working right now and not getting their pay. And for the public, this means they're not working on regulations that are now lagging because they're not showing up. Their lab certifies fuel efficiency numbers automakers display when selling cars to ensure that they protect our air quality and abide by the emission standards. So, Madam Speaker, this is reckless and irresponsible. It is reckless that Mitch McConnell's Senate cannot muster up the courage to reopen the government. Senator McConnell works for the American people. He has been missing in action during this crisis. He doesn't work for the President of the United States. He works for the American people. And I ask him to stand up and do what's right for all of us and for our nation and open up government. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield my time to the gentlewoman from Minnesota, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to mark the 26th day of what is now the longest running government shutdown in history. A shutdown which is nothing more than a manufactured crisis designed to distract us from the instability and dysfunction that rules the Trump's White House. Trump has orchestrated this shutdown because he's looking for someone else to blame for the ineffectiveness of his administration. He wants to point to us here in Congress and claim that we are the reason he's failing to lead this country. But that blame, Madam Speaker, belongs to Trump and Trump only. He single-handedly forced 7 agencies to stop their crucial work that impacts the health and safety of every American. Soon, millions of people could start to go hungry as the government runs out of money to fund nutritional assistance through the SNAP program. Thousands could face eviction and become homeless as HUD becomes unable to deliver desperately needed housing assistance. Federal courts could shut down. Our aviation system could come to a halt as flights are grounded. And the list, Madam Speaker, goes on and on. But even before this shameful shutdown began, the executive branch agencies were already struggling to operate under Trump's leadership or the lack thereof. As of today, there are more than 200 critical agencies, positions for which Trump has failed to even put forward a nominee. That's more than 200 agencies, offices, and resources that are operating without a defined leadership, full of staff or resources. Consequently, even once we are able to end this debilitating shutdown, our federal government will still be operating at less than full capacity, so long as we have an ineffective, ego-driven president at the helm. As a member of Congress, we took an oath to put the people of this country first, to protect their right, safety, and well-being. That's we are here in the House, voted on day 1 of this Congress, and nearly every day since, to reopen this government. The President took a similar oath, and it is time that he honor it. Because, Madam Speaker, the American people deserve better. The 400,000 furloughed federal employees deserve better, including the 6,000 workers in my district alone who are currently wondering how they are going to pay their rent at the first of the month, and if they are able to afford simple necessities like childcare and food. Deserve better. If the President wants to have a real conversation about border security, we are ready to have it. We can talk about finding a solution to our broken immigration system and how to adopt policies that extend humanity and compassion to migrants and refugees. Every day, families are fleeing violence and untold hardships in countries like Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. These people are running from situations that are so brutal that most Americans thankfully cannot comprehend. But as a refugee from Somalia, I do. So I invite the President to engage in a real conversation with Congress on immigration. If he wants, we can talk about the $2 million the Guatemala government paid to DC lobbyists and how our government is cozying up to corrupt regimes in that country. If he's interested, we could also talk about the US funding and training for Honduras security forces that are involved in serious human rights violations and how these policies that we support are forcing people to flee from their homeland. If he wants to talk, we are ready to talk. But we don't need government shutdown to do it. I join the similar calls made by my colleagues today, and I demand that the president end his temper tantrums and quest for a racist and xenophobic wall. And I demand that he work with us to reopen the government before any more damage is done. Enough is enough. The American people deserve better. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield to the gentlewoman from Bronx, New York, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise to tell the story of one of my constituents, Yahi Obed. Mr. Obed was born in Yemen and came to the United States when he was 8 years old. His childhood dream was to become a pilot, and he knew and felt that in the United States all things are possible, and his dream could come true. Mr. Obed's dream did come true. He's been a federal employee for 14 years, has 2 children, and a mortgage for his home in the Morris Park neighborhood of the Bronx. He studied hard, got his pilot's license, and is now an air traffic controller supervisor at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City. I spoke with Mr. Obed today over the phone. He and air traffic controllers like him across the country missed their first paycheck this past week. He was telling me about how stressful his job is. Every single day, air traffic controllers have thousands of people's lives in their hands. With weather changes, flight delays, staffing complexities, and a myriad of other issues, their days almost never go exactly to plan. His job is to find solutions, analyze and adapt in real time to keep people safe in one of the busiest airspaces in the United States and the world. And it is terrifying to think that almost every single air traffic controller in the United States is currently distracted at work because they don't know when their next paycheck is coming. Federal workers' jobs are stressful enough. The rise in New York City's cost of living is stressful enough. The fact that Mr. Obed's family cannot be reunified due to fears over the Muslim ban is stressful enough. His several $1,000s a month Bronx mortgage is stressful enough. The anti-immigrant sentiment of this administration is stressful enough. And the truth of this shutdown is that it's actually not about a wall. It is not about the border, and it is certainly not about the well-being of everyday Americans. The truth is, this shutdown is about the erosion of American democracy and the subversion of our most basic governmental norms. It is not normal to hold 800,000 workers' paychecks hostage. It is not normal to shut down the government when we don't get what we want. It is not normal for public servants to run away and hide from the public that they serve. And it is certainly not normal to starve the people we serve for a proposal that is wildly unpopular among the American people. Each and every member of this body has a responsibility to this nation and to everyone in the United States of America, whether they voted for us or not. And this president shares in that responsibility as well, which means he has a responsibility to my constituent, Mr. Obed. President Trump has a responsibility to all air traffic controllers, FDA inspectors, TSA workers, and he has a responsibility to maintain the basic functioning of the United States government. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I yield my time.